appreciate you for tuning into this episode of Overall HR. And I'm excited once again because I have another friend with me who very much I consider a friend. We met a few months ago in a networking group here in Central Kentucky, and I admire her for what she does, but also, most importantly, for who she is. And rather than me continuing to hype her up and fangirl about her and who she is, I'll have her introduce herself.
Well, if you want to blow my head up, I'm here for it. Okay. So I'm Ashley Ramsey, and I am the majority owner / CEO / attorney / whatever I need to be in any given moment of the day.
Wearer of all hats.
Wearer of all hats at Springdale Title, which is a title company, and nobody knows what that means. But the long and short of it is, if you're buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, you have to sign documents. Someone has to draft those and explain them to you and notarize them when you sign them. And that's what title companies do.
Perfect. Now this has been your industry. Is that correct? Is this all that you talk to me about? I guess your professional background in, I guess, the title, not just the title industry, but walk us through that.
Sure. So I've done a little bit of everything. When I was in law school, I worked for an attorney who did mainly criminal law, a little bit of family, some Social Security work. None of that really interested me. I knew 100% criminal was not my forte.
Not it.
Not it. That was not going to be where I landed. So when I graduated and I went to another firm in Richmond, I wanted to go somewhere that focused on a lot of different things so I could kind of figure out what my niche was. I always really liked real estate in law school, but I didn't, I just didn't know if that was where I was going to land. So I was an associate, so that meant I did whatever no one else wanted to do. So I did a little bit of it, all of it. I would go to landlord-tenant court and probate and family court, which is terrible. OSHA violations.
Okay.
On work sites. Truly, a little bit of everything. And I worked there for a few years, and I was not even looking for a job because, this is the way that Jesus works things out.
Yeah.
And I just got a call. It kind of fell in my lap that Springdale Title needed an attorney. So I thought, well, what's it going to hurt to have a conversation? And then, here I am all these years later. It just kind of, it worked out.
Well, I love that. And I didn't realize, I guess, and I'm sure that you have told me this because, when we crossed paths, I was meeting a ton of people in that same group. So a lot of information was coming at me in terms of, personal stories and then professional walks. It was like, okay, make sure that I get this correct. But you, it sounds like in your story, you were met with a choice in terms of quite literally saving Springdale Title.
That is true.
Okay. So I'm sure that took a lot of faith in terms of taking a leap to make that happen.
It did. So when I started at Springdale in 2012 as just a staff attorney. And then in 2014, I bought in and I became a minority owner. Mm-hmm. So as the years went on, I got more and more involved in the day-to-day of the operations, but then I was still a minority owner. The majority owner was a mortgage company, which goes hand in hand with title because, they're just feeding a lot of business into the title company. Mm-hmm. In 2022, toward the end of 2022, that mortgage company who had been in business for over 40 years decided, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore. We're going to sell to another company. And at that point, I kind of had to make a decision. Okay, am I going to buy out their share and try to keep this going, knowing that we would be standalone? We would have no one that was feeding business into us.
Yes.
That we just kind of had to get in there and do the work, or sell my share and, go get a new job somewhere, right?
Right.
So I prayed a lot.
Oh, I bet.
About what the right decision was going to be.
Yeah.
And in the end, obviously we're still here and we're doing well. And that would be because I made the leap to buy out their share, and we just kept going. And it's been an adventure, to say the least, but a good one. It's been a good one.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, I always love hearing stories such as that because in business, and particularly like acquiring business such as yours, and I have no qualms with saying, like, I knew early on, like, I have to have Ashley on overall HR because there's a lot of knowledge wrapped up within you. Even just hearing your professional story, your educational preparation, how you carry yourself, but also you have been exposed professionally in a lot of different scenarios and situations, which is just wisdom at its finest. So when I was thinking of like how we can have a dialogue that would be fun, but also useful to listeners, I really kind of wanted to go the route of acquiring something, because you did not have the opportunity to build from the ground up. And there are pros and cons of both options, but I would argue, again, my opinion, you might need a little more Advil and Tylenol whenever you're acquiring something, because you are building in the same way someone like myself is from the ground up, but you're also having to go against the grain of something that's been established for a long time.
Absolutely.
And that's difficult. But something about you that I noticed very early on is that culture and brand consistency is important to you. You're a very intentional person, also in coming to know who you are, and there has to be an intent behind that. So talk to us about why this is so important to you in terms of Springdale Title having such strong brand messaging.
Sure. So our colors are black, white, and yellow. And as you can see,
yes.
And this is like my normal all day, every day attire. I mean, something of this nature. Yeah. And it comes from, I don't know if your parents ever told you this. This is an old adage of dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So this has just been instilled in me. So I began to think about that from a company perspective, okay, brand perspective.
Mm-hmm.
If you are down the street or you are across the world and you see golden arches, you know exactly what restaurant you're walking into. Period. You recognize it. Yep. You know the brand. So my thought was, okay, well, we're small. We're a small business. We're not on the Fortune 500 list or anything, but you have to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being consistent with those colors and the branding puts people's thoughts. I mean, it brings, like, for instance, I've had somebody at TJ Maxx see black and yellow shoes and text them to me, "You need these shoes."
I love
because
that.
They saw the colors. They immediately thought of Springdale. Okay. Yep.
Uh-huh.
So that was just kind of where it came from. Like, okay, we've got to start somewhere. I want people to have that brand recognition, that brand awareness when they see colors, when they're out and about, when they're scrolling through their feed and those colors pop up where they're like, oh, I'm going to stop a moment because I know that's a Springdale post. Let me read it. Because they know who we are. Yeah. And if we can do that locally and slowly spread out, then, maybe one day if we're across more states than we're even in right now or whatever, we'll have that brand recognition.
I love that. And there is an element of truth to that because I can remember when you went on your cruise, I had just been, I guess, named as vice president of our BNI group, which that was your previous vice president. And I remember being in the group and I said something like, I don't have on black and yellow today, but I'm not Ashley. Like, I'm subbing for Ashley. I'm not subbing for Ashley. I'm Chase. I'm Chase today. But there's a lot of truth. Like, it's just, and it's cool to what you're saying because even all of us notice, like, you are representative of Springdale Title, and the black and
Mm-hmm.
yellow is. I love that story of someone, because I think of Ashley sometimes when I see black and yellow. It's like, oh, Ashley would like that, just because
Yeah.
it's a part of your brand identity.
And I don't
Um,
have to go around and say it to you. You just recognize it because that's what you
exactly.
always see me in.
Yes, yes, and those touches though are so important, and that's why I'll never forget when I was just really kind of first starting out full time with Equip. I'd done a webinar, and you attended those webinars,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on building a strong team. And one element of that webinar was about creating a culture. And
Yeah.
so many businesses, they just don't get it. They don't understand that in order to have, we'll say, an efficient team, people have to have something to resonate with. And if there's no elements of anything to resonate with, even if it is black and yellow, it's relatable. Like, that's just the essence of human experience. We want something to relate to and to build a personal connection. And sometimes you can start with the most simplistic things like a color, and it gives people an opportunity to, I guess, showcase consideration. So,
Yeah.
um, you also, though, I love your slogan. So, or I wouldn't say maybe it's your mission statement, but you have like a little tagline at
Mm-hmm.
the bottom of a lot of your marketing. Do you care to share with our listeners what that tagline is and what it means?
Well, the tagline is "We say yes," and what that means is basically we're never going to say no to a challenge. So, um, if you've got a closing, I mean, I could tell stories all day long, truck drivers who are on the road and they're like, well, I need to close on a Saturday when I have time to stop my truck wherever that's going to be. And we close on a Saturday, and it doesn't matter what state they're in. We find somebody to come meet them exactly where they are, bring the documents to them, and then take care of the documents after they're signed so they don't have to worry about it. We've gone into labor and delivery rooms before epidurals were given. Everyone was of sound mind. Um, truly, I mean, again, I make the joke that I've gone to jail to get documents signed. I wasn't put in jail, but I've gone to the
You've gone
jail.
to jail.
I've gone to jail so that we could get some deeds signed. So, we accommodate. That's really what it amounts to. We accommodate when there's tough title problems that need to be resolved. We get a lot of referrals for those because there are other title companies or attorneys' offices that might do real estate here and there on the side that are like, listen, this is more work than we want to put in. Call Ashley. they'll
And you, yeah.
they'll work it out for you because we just don't say no.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking in my head, and I imagine this kind of goes into your thought progression whenever you're looking at adding to your team. Not everyone is cut out for Springdale
No,
Title. You answered that
that's
really
true.
quickly, so expand on that just a little bit.
That's so true. Well, when I sit down with people when we're doing interviews, one of the first things I tell people, and listen, no one believes me when I say this because they don't think I really mean it. But I say to people, like, culture that's not something I'm going to compromise on. So let me explain, what that means to us. And I give it to them, I'm like, if there's toxicity, if there's a bad attitude, if there's disrespect amongst the team, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. So if you are not the type of person who can work well with other people and, maintain a respectful environment, not just among among coworkers, but to clients, this is not going to work. I don't care if you can process 100 files by yourself and they're flawless. If you are a Debbie Downer, it's just not going to work out.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
and again, people don't they think, oh, she's bluffing. But no, I mean it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. Like, I think I'm a pretty, like, my intuition is pretty high.
I agree
And
with you on that.
I wouldn't say you're an intimidating person at all, but it's like, in meeting you, I just knew I can pick out consistent people. And it's like, this person is unapologetically themselves. they're a kind person, but they're a consistent person. And they may tell you, I don't agree with that, but someone else that's in front of them, it could be your husband who you love more than anyone else in this world. And if they're doing the same behavior, you'll look at them and say, I don't agree with that, because that's just who you are. And that, I think, though, goes a long way. It can be challenging to work for a lot of people, but for those motivated individuals that are motivated in the same way you are, it's, I'm not going to say easier to work for, but it's more, you can have more confidence in working for that person, because I'm sure, like, they know what to expect from you.
Right.
And that is, whenever, and one of my previous experiences, I would tell people, you can fix a jerk who knows they're a jerk, but you can't fix a jerk who doesn't know they're a jerk. And if someone comes to the table, at least if I know I've done something that will disappoint Ashley, like maybe I accidentally used navy blue instead of black on the Canva upload, she's going to be grumpy about that. But if I know she's going to be grumpy about it, then I can deal with it. But if I don't know what to expect, she might be happy one day or grumpy the next. It just creates uncertainty. So strong cultures are important, and consistently upholding those is important too, because your people know what their expectations are. Yeah. And, we touched on this at the beginning of our conversation, but, inheriting a business is a whole lot different than building. Talk to us a little bit about the time in which you acquired Springdale. Did you continue the culture that you were part of, or did you create a different one, or was it a hybrid between what was, while also keeping in mind what you wanted to attain?
I would say it was a little bit of a hybrid, because even though I was a minority owner, I had a decent amount of control over some of the day-to-day in the area that I was in. Mm-hmm. So we had a portion of people who were really used to how I did things, and we had kind of built a good culture within that unit. And then we had other areas that were not the same. I will leave it at that. We're not the same. And so kind of taking what we had started over here and expanding it to every branch, every state, to get everybody on the same page. That was the challenge. Mm-hmm. And I say challenge, it's not that anybody really pushed back on it, I wouldn't say, but it was just different, because it was like, well, wait a minute, this is how we've always done things. And that's, listen, I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase. This is how we've always done it. Well, that doesn't mean that that's the best way. It doesn't mean it's the most efficient way. It doesn't mean that you should never change and adapt to new technology and new ideas from your team. So that's just not an excuse for me. So I'm like, oh, I don't care how we've always done it. So we're not trying to stay stagnant. We're trying to elevate. So we're going to do something new. And either you're on the same page and you're on board, or you're not. Either we're rowing in the same direction or we're not. And if you don't want to row in the same direction as the whole rest of the team, there are no hard feelings. Love you, but it's not going to work.
Exactly. Well, and I think that more businesses, particularly smaller businesses that are looking to grow like yourselves, like, that's really important to make sure that there's alignment on the team. And whenever you are the size of your business, and knowing, again, where you want to go, you're accessible, but you're also doing things that, like, there's this misconception that small business operators, CEOs, are more accessible. They are, in the sense that there's not many individuals in between them in the hierarchy, but they're also doing a whole lot more in the terms of in and on the business. And it's just, there's not as much focus time either. So it's a balance.
Yeah. And when you figure the balance out, come tell me what it is. I'd love to know.
I don't know that it exists. I'm starting to think that balance is just a made up word. I just don't know that it exists. Yeah. Well, and, like time, I feel like October was crazy for me. And I was thinking today, I was actually arguing with my best friend prior to this that Christmas was not next Wednesday. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
crap,
but
like
it
it
is.
is. It really is. But there are some things that for me as a person, we all have the same amount of time. And there's some things I'm just not willing to compromise on.
Yeah.
My big rocks in terms of deliverables for clients is payroll for obvious reasons. Like people work to get paid.
People want
That's
to be paid.
always
They get mad when they're not paid on time.
exactly, yes. Like that's the big rock. And if I know there's a deadline that's important, I'll get to it. But I'm not willing to compromise like family time on Sunday. I'm willing to be behind and feel more stressed on a Monday than I am to, stay inside while Cam Jam is going for a walk or, a family dinner. That's just that's my personal choice. But there are consequences of that. But if I worked during that time, there's also consequences to that too. So balance
Absolutely.
and time just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and Sundays, I'm in the same boat on that because Sundays are the one day that I will not work.
Yep.
That's family day. It's a day to go to church. It's a day of rest. It's, all of those things. So that's my limit. I work almost every single Saturday, and I have been doing that since October of 2019. So I'm tired of it, but things have to get done, right? Like you said, things just have to get done. But that's where I draw the line. I'm like, that's my day. I'm not doing anything that day.
Well, and good for you for doing that. And, it's one of those things where I do believe that, and it's funny because, I had told you earlier that Katie and I had a good conversation about insurance. What else do you talk to Katie Farthing about in the context of an HR podcast? But we were having a conversation about how work is really a need of humans. And, when you take a look at creation, Adam and Eve were put to tend to the earth. But there is, again, that word of balance and compromise and, making decisions in terms of we weren't built for just extremes for anything. No matter, really, the essence of sin is taking a God-given gift and taking it to one extreme or the other. But there is joy found in building and serving and doing things, but it's about not letting that overtake the other aspects of what life's about.
Right. Obviously, we're here to serve in multiple aspects of life. We're here to serve. But, as our lovely business coach, Misty Lakes, who I know you love as much as I do, as she would say, you can't pour into others if your cup is empty.
Absolutely.
So that's where the balance comes in. You have to replenish yourself as well in order to be able to serve the people that need served.
Oh, yeah. Well, and, you're in a unique position as well because you have 15 people reporting, 14 people, 15, around that number reporting directly to you. But you also have other clients, too, that don't report to you, but you go to jail for them and you're serving them. So it's just when you're pouring and pouring and pouring, which I think also is indicative of why having a consistent culture is important because it keeps you grounded in terms of the why behind the what's. But transitioning back to a question I have for you kind of in that same context of acquisitions, your business model is one that includes acquiring businesses while concurrently you're super intentional in hiring the right people. How do you touched on this a little bit, Ashley, with your interview question, but how do you keep company culture at the forefront of these decisions when you're looking at expanding your business?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to do because people always tell you what they want to hear, what you want to hear, right? No one sits down in an interview and says, oh, yeah, I'm super toxic. You don't want to hire me. No one says that. And you can call all the references and, try to do all of those sorts of things. And that will help weed some problems out. But inevitably, there are going to be people that you hire that you don't realize until they've been here a minute that they're not going to adapt, you know. That's just a part of it. And the only thing that you can do in a situation like that is be consistent.
I love that.
And if it's not going to fit, you know, again, there doesn't have to be hard feelings. You know what I mean? This doesn't have to be I hate you, let's never speak again. It can very much be, listen, I think you're great. I think you're doing I think you're doing a good job. But culturally speaking, this doesn't seem to be a good fit. You know, we've given it multiple tries here, and it's still just not clicking. And I think for your best interest and our best interest, like, you know, let me help you find a place that's going to fit you better.
Right. Right. Well,
and I'm happy to do that. I'm happy, you know, to help people find the right fit. Because again, it's not a personal thing. It's not a hard feelings kind of thing. Like I want them to do well, and I want them to be in a place where they enjoy going to work every day. I mean, that's the whole part of culture. Like the idea behind great culture for me is I've had some great jobs. I have had some really terrible jobs over time. I'm sure you could probably say the same thing. I remember what it was like to dread walking through the doors. That is a miserable existence. It's a miserable way to live. I don't want anyone to ever feel like that. And I also don't want the whole rest of the team to dread one person all day, every day. So it's kind of the give and take. So I want the culture to be consistent across the board. I want people to enjoy coming to work. I want them to respect one another, have fun with one another. And again, not everybody is going to fit that particular mold for Springdale, and that's fine. There is a place that they will find that's going to be great for them, and that's where they need to be. And I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know, this question, as you were talking there, I'm curious to hear your take on this. Addressing behavior for anybody, like, I don't care who you are, it's not fun.
Oh, it's not.
And it comes with the territory of being a business owner. But in your opinion, Ashley, which is more challenging to address? Those that are not adhering to the company culture, or those that have maybe, like, they're making functional mistakes as it pertains to the essence of a job duty?
Culture.
Easily. Why do you think that is?
Hands down. Well, because, you know, when someone is making mistakes in the day-to-day, like, processing of things, you know, that's a training issue. That's okay. I'm noticing this. Let's sit down. Let's go through the training again. Let me see where I can help you. That's something that's curable. That's much more curable. So it's an easier conversation to have because there's hope, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But culture-wise, you know, most people, you know, tigers are not changing their stripes. So either your personality is one that you are willing to learn, you're willing to adapt, you're willing to, you know, like we do those DISC tests. I know that you've been doing some of that, where we learn about each other's personalities, and we learn how to communicate with different personalities. And either you're someone that can take that sort of thing to heart and say, okay, I recognize, you know, that I'm a D. And that I need to talk to someone who is an S personality a little differently so that they receive it well. Or you're someone that says, I am who I am. I'm not changing. I don't care what anybody else thinks. And they just need to toughen up. And if you're just not willing, you know, to make the changes and to try to communicate well and try to keep the culture intact, then, you know, there's just not any hope there. So that's a much harder discussion to say, listen, there's not a lot of training we can do with this.
Right. You're broken. And I can't fix you.
I can't fix you. I can't fix this. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, especially when people are new, you give the benefit of the doubt, and you go to them and say, like, hey, I'm noticing such and such. What can I do? What can I do to help you with this? Is there, extra time with Misty, with personality training or whatever that we can try to accomplish? But you can tell pretty quickly people who are willing to put in the work and the people who are not. And so those are the hardest conversations, is to say, like,
well,
it's not happening.
I love that you said that, Ashley, because I was thinking in my head, and I'm going to ask the question, even though you sort of answered it. As someone that has been operating Springdale Title in your current capacity, how long would you say, like an approximation? I know every person is different. Like, how long does it take you to tell, okay, like this person, they may not know the job very well, but they're going to be a culture fit for us?
It doesn't take long. I mean, I would say easily within the first month of employment, you can tell if someone is going to be a team player and fit well with the group or not. I mean, you can usually tell pretty quickly.
Well, I was thinking, maybe you should, like, some smaller businesses will do like these sort of subjective assessments. Like, for example, like if your model is like, we say yes, like cancel the interview and see if they're willing to accommodate, like do these like tiny, like realistic things prior to the interview, just to assess kind of like whether they fit your culture model. But, I don't know. I just love culture because I think that you're spot on. And I wrote the word down, curable, because I hadn't ever thought of it in that context in terms of addressing job performance. But I can remember, culture is also hard to address too, because it can appear to be very subjective. And it's not a matter of preference. It's a matter of, here's who we are. Like, you think of Chick-fil-A. If someone is working the drive-thru and they're saying, you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome, it may seem very petty to pull someone in a room if you're at Springdale Title and say, I need you to say my pleasure whenever someone says thank you, because that's not like part of your brand. But at Chick-fil-A, if a general manager does that, it's consistently, which is a word you've used a lot, implemented, and it's not personal or preferential. It's like, it's who we are. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about Springdale Title, is that you have those defined so well, which is why in the scope of HR, having at least a consistent practice is important when it comes to addressing behavior, because you can differentiate between personal and also just, it's who we are. It's our practice. So.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate today's conversation. It's been good, and I think there's a lot that can be taken away for our listeners today. And for those of you that are in need of any sort of title service, please, I got a thumbs up here too. My Riverside picked up on that. I had fireworks earlier. Reach out to Ashley and her team at Springdale Title. Thanks for joining me, Ashley.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.